Hello, good people of YouTube. Mountbatten here, and today we're taking a look at the sister ship of the Giuseppe Verdi, which is the Tier 9 Premium Italian battleship, the Marco Polo. So, the Marco Polo and the Verdi are two very similar but very different ships. Like we talked about in the Verdi video, which I'll link either in the description or somewhere here, she's very much a close-range ship, with, of course, brawling in mind, as she has SAP secondaries. The Marco Polo, on the other hand, is much more of a mid to long-ish range ship, although she also performs best at mid to closer range ship because of her main battery guns. Unlike the Verdi, she has SAP as one of her ammunition choices for her main battery guns. SAP and AP, that's all she has, no HE. Now, unlike the rest of the Italian battleships, she does also have 16-inch guns. The Italian battleships had to stop at 15-inch guns, and that's how we get the Colombo with its 15-inch guns at Tier 10. And when you play this ship, if you have it in port, and maybe you picked up during an event, or if you bought it just on a whim or something and haven't really played it too much, you can see why they had to stop at 15 inches for the Italian battleship tech line. Because these guns they're very good. When these guns connect, you will be doing a lot of damage to whatever it is that you're shooting at when you have SAP loaded. Because, again, it's SAP, it pins pretty much everything, and it has a high alpha, so it's not uncommon for you to be doing in the neighborhood of 20 to 30k in a single salvo without citadeling whatever it is that you're shooting at with the main battery guns on this ship. She can be pretty darn nasty at times. However, like you'll see in the gameplay footage in the background, you might get one of those salvos in a game and you won't see anything near that same level. The game watching in the background is a pretty good example of what can and happens a lot with the Marco Polo when you take her out in today's World of Warships. The game in the background is actually a more mobile game than what we see a lot of times at higher tier. Normally, and those of you that play a lot of higher tier games know this, for those of you that maybe play more mid tier, normally what happens is that both teams kind of just sit where they're at and stare at each other for like 15 minutes. And eventually one side will completely collapse, and then the enemy team or whatever team will proceed to steamroll the other team out of existence. This game was a bit more mobile and a bit more back and forth, and went for a pretty decent amount of time, and I was on track to do pretty well in the Marco Polo, but as happens a lot when I play the Marco Polo, it seems circumstances out of my control just prevailed against me. It's still a decent game, but I could have done a lot better if a certain underwater feature didn't get in my way, and I'm sure you'll see that here in a minute. But anyway, when you're able to get in close, the Marco Polo is a pretty decent ship, especially with the SAP guns. But we're going to go ahead and look through her stats real quick, and I'll touch on each one, then I'll talk more about her in today's World of Warships after we run through her stats here real quick. So, I am running the Italian Special Commander Cincinnati on my Marco Polo. Build should have been up at the beginning of this video. I'll throw it back up again here. Cincinnati is great on any Italian ship, so if you can get him by getting his containers in the armory, which you have to exchange for coal, it costs, well, if you get lucky, it'll cost you around like 180-ish thousand coal to get all of Cincinnati's containers that you need to complete his collection. Unlucky, I think like 220 is the upper end of the spectrum, which for a unique commander as good as Cincinnati, and how you can literally throw him on any Italian ship and he just makes it so much better. I say he's worth it. He's definitely one of the better unique commanders. But anyway, for the armor layout on the Marco Polo, well, it's the same as the Giuseppe Verdi. They share the same hull. They have a 32mm bow, 32mm stern and bow deck. You have this 130mm cheek plate, which changes into a 320mm main armor belt. Stern does not have any icebreaker slats on it or any cheek plates. Upper armor is 70mm, and when you take away her armor, she does have a turtleback citadel, very thin citadel at that too. Her citadel is only 25mm, so when something can get through that 320mm armor belt, it's not much more for them to just go ahead and penetrate that 25mm citadel and chunk your ship. So while it looks good on paper, when you get down to it, she is not impossible to citadel, but she doesn't get citadel too much from my experiences. But yeah, tier 10 with all the 18-inch gun battleships, it does happen. So watch your sides when you're playing this ship. Survivability, she has 69,100 hit points and 27 torpedo damage reduction, 27% torpedo damage reduction. And for her main battery guns, like I mentioned, she does have 9 16-inch guns with a 36-second base reload time, which is quite long for a 9-gun battleship at tier 9. They have a 180 turn time of 30 seconds with the build that I'm running, maximum dispersion of 262 meters with the build that I'm running, and a maximum range of 22.1 kilometers, again with the build that I'm running. Right now, why am I running range build on the Marco Polo? Because, well, this is a high-tier battleship, and the ugly truth is that many high-tier games, the teams rarely get within 15 kilometers of each other for the majority of the game. So for a majority of the game, if you don't have range that extends out past 20 kilometers, you're just sitting there doing nothing, or you have to get suicidally close in the first 10 or so minutes of the match. So can a reload build work with the Marco Polo? Yes, it does have spotter, so you can use that. But it, again, with how long the reload time is on spotter plane, do you really want to depend on that? I don't. So again, it's up to you. I've tried it with a reload build. It can work, but with a range build, you're able to get much more shots in my experience, have much better results at the end of the match. Plus, with Adrenaline Rush, you will get your reload down pretty quickly in this ship, especially with how tier 10 games are. But anyway, the SAP does a maximum damage of 14,100. It can pin 102 millimeters of armor and travels out the tubes at 836 meters a second. AP does a maximum damage of 13,050 and exit the tubes at 836 meters a second. Now, you might be wondering too why I don't really switch to AP in the background footage. The only time you would switch to AP, not only in this battleship or in this battleship or in the Declan Italian battleships, would be if you know there's 100% chance you can citadel whatever it is that you're shooting at with your AP. If you know that, like, if it's a broadside battleship like an Iowa that's 10 kilometers away from you, you know you can get a couple citadels in there, yes, go ahead and switch to AP. And that's something that on my commander build I could probably swap out to. Go with Gunfeeder with the new Italian Gunfeeder commander skill. You could certainly make more use of that, and that is something I would recommend you do try out. But in the game in the background, I didn't have that on. Again, with how often you'll really be switching to it, maybe not, but it is something I should probably try out. But anyway, other than that, keep a SAP loaded, because it has a higher alpha, you're going to be doing more damage, and to be honest, the guns really aren't accurate enough to really have decent AP citadels at medium range. The guns do have 1.9 Sigma on them, but it still has that terrible Italian battleship dispersion. And this is kind of where you see how they couldn't make anything larger than 15-inch SAP guns work on a tech line. Because in order to balance these guns out, the dispersion has to be absolutely atrocious, and you have to have a small number of guns. Even with these 9 shells, and with the terrible dispersion, you only really need 2 shells to hit to be doing almost 10k alpha a salvo, and it's not hard to get at least 2 shells to hit with the Marco Polo, especially since they buffed your Sigma up to 1.9. The guns are very shotgunny, but even at long ranges, you can pretty much always get 2 to hit, which means you'll be doing like 8 to 10k a salvo every salvo. So sure, it's not a lot at once, but it still is a decent amount. And then when you are able to get in close to like 13-ish kilometers, now you're chunking them for 20 to 30k a salvo with this SAP. And that hurts a lot. And again, that's without citadeling them. That's just through pure pins. Now, of course, over time, if you're trying to farm the same target, it doesn't have HE, so eventually the damage saturation will kick in, and you will be getting less damage. But by that point, you've probably stripped that poor ship of like 60% of its HP pool by that point. So, yeah, you can see why they had to leave them at 15-inch guns, because you would have had to had like the tier 10 be armed with maybe, I don't know, you can even do 12 of these 16-inch guns at tier 10. Maybe with some weird setup like an Italian Republic where they have eight guns, 16-inch guns, or something like that. I just couldn't see how they could really realistically get it to work and be balanced in the game, because again, the SAP alpha is through the roof with these shells, and it does this to cruisers and battleships very well. It's so easy. If you catch a cruiser that's not paying attention, you catch them broadside with these guns, especially with the SAP, you're going to ruin their day, if not outright delete them. And then at that point, if it's cruisers, there's some cruisers in the game that this ship can citadel quite easily with these SAP shells, and then now you're doing 14,000 damage to them, which is insane. So yeah, the guns are really nice when they work. At medium to close range, it's very easy to chunk the living crap out of pretty much anything that you come across. Of course, DDs get the special limitation on the amount of damage that they can take because they're DDs, and if they let DDs take full SAP damage from BB caliber shells, they cease to exist with like one shell hitting them. So yeah, so guns are nice but aggravating at times, because again, you'll be landing probably 2 shells a salvo, definitely more so than the other Italian battleships, but it is still frustrating missing all those shots at times. However, the SAP does make up for it. So you guys see, it's kind of a toss-up there with the guns, but overall, I do like them. Secondary, she has the the 12 90mm secondary, 12 by 2 90mm secondaries, and then the 4 by 3 152s, but they fire HE, so they're pretty much useless. AA rating of 72, very similar to the Giuseppe Verdi. Not an AA ship, has of course the very short range Italian AA with that 4.6 kilometer maximum range. Maneuverability, I really like the ship's maneuverability, 33.6 knots maximum speed with the speed flag, and a 16.7 second rudder shift time. Concealment, 13.2 kilometers with a build, that is with the module and the commander skill. For her consumables, she gets spotter, a fighter, she gets a heal, regens 414 HP per second, is active for 30.8 seconds, and reloads in 76 seconds. And for a damage con, it's the standard battleship damage con, 16.5 second runtime, reloads in 76 seconds. Alright, so the Marco Polo in today's World of Warships. It's become more frustrating to play because, again, at higher tier games, the meta's getting more and more stale and more passive. And especially with the introduction of submarines and submarines coming out in full in October, I don't expect it's going to get any better. So you'll find yourself sitting back at range more and more with the Marco Polo, and landing those 2 or 3 shell hits every salvo or every other salvo, again, especially at that range. The gun velocity is quite nice. It does have the Italian gun velocity, so you don't have to lead your target to that much, but the dispersion's still going to screw you over. And for the most part, those 2 shell hits, that'll get you through to where when once you can push in, you're chunking ships for 20 or 30k sometimes, and by the end of it, you've got like 120,000 damage done in the match. But that's if you can push in and actually get that damage in. If you're stuck in the back sniping all the time and just getting 2 or 3 shell hits, you won't really be up there in the damage numbers. You'd be at like 80 or 90k, sure, but again, it's so frustrating to play the ship like that, be living off of just 1 or 2 shell hits every salvo, and you never get to push in, and you just ship to the full potential. Because once you get in close, the armor is very good, like the Roma from the bow in. You can sit bow in and angled and tank for a very long time, and again, shove your 16-inch SAP up whatever passes in front of you, and it's very good when you can do that. And in this match, you saw when I was able to push in and I was able to get close range shots at enemy ships, this ship chunks them for, again, like 14, 15, 20k. I've chunked an Engels Jean Bar with this ship before, like fully bow on. I hit him right in the sweet spot for the SAP to pin. Did 30k to the guy once. That's how good this SAP is. It's just getting into the situation to where you can get close enough to where the dispersion isn't screwing you over, is happening less and less and less and less now. To get the game you see in the background, I had to play for about 2 or 3 hours. This is one match out of those 2 or 3 hours, and I still wind up getting screwed over toward the end of the match because I get stuck on an island that I'm not touching. And, I go back, go forward, ship doesn't get itself unstuck after playing with the rudder and the throttle. Eventually, the ship does get itself unstuck, and I feel cheated because for those 2 minutes that I got stuck there, that's another 3.5 salvos that I could have gotten off, and I probably would have been like the 140-ish range for damage by the end of this match. But God, it just feels like you have to have everything go your way in a match to have a good game with this ship. This match too, Thunderstorm Front, drops the dispersion by 5%. I'm sure you guys saw when I took a shot at that Iowa from 8 kilometers away, and I got that 5% debuff to the dispersion, how terrible that was. So yeah, it's a frustrating ship sometimes to play. So is she worth getting in 2022? I wouldn't really rush out to buy it. If you gotta have a tier 9 premium Italian battleship, this is the one to pick over the Verdi in my opinion. But I do think your money could be better spent elsewhere when it comes to tier 9 premium ships. Now, if you want a tier 9 premium Italian battleship trainer, you can get the Roma at tier 8, which is better for its tier. But if you gotta have one of the tier 9 Italian battleships, one of the tier 9 premium Italian battleships, sure, this is the one to pick over the Verdi. But just know, it's going to be frustrating to play a lot, especially in the current meta at higher tier. Just know that going in. And this is a tier 9, so this ship does cost like $77 US. So, yeah, if you want to drop that type of money on this game, I'd recommend buying Premium Time or something like the Kearsarge instead. But hey, again, if you got to have your tier 9 Italian premium battleship, this is the one to pick over the Verdi. So guys, that's my 2 cents on the Marco Polo. Let me know what you guys think in the comments down below. Hope you guys are having a wonderful Friday. If you enjoyed today's video, make sure to drop a like and subscribe to the channel. We're on our way to 40,000 subscribers, and I cannot thank you guys enough for that. We're also going to be live streaming right here and on Twitch tonight on the channel from 5 p.m. U.S. Central Time to around 8 p.m. or 9 p.m. U.S. Central Time, I should say, 4 hours tonight. So make sure to come out for that. We always have a blast on stream. Okay, guys, hope you're having a wonderful Friday. Have a wonderful weekend. Hope to catch you guys in the next one.